queer and trans people reveal God and aren't just kind of welcome and accepted in the diversity of human beings, but actually have unique superpowers and unique illuminations and revelations of divinity that cishet people just can't show us about God. And so actually we don't just need to include them in the human story and in the church story, but actually we need them to show us a more full picture of who God is.
Hey, so before we start this episode, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have been having yarning circles and telling stories on this land for millions of years, just like we're doing right now.
Yeah, and as we share people's stories on the Wurundjeri and Wurrung people's land of the Kulin Nation, we know that so many people listening will be listening on various other lands.
Yeah.
So we just want to take this moment to pay our respects.
Pay our respects to their elders, past and present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so much we can learn from that culture.
Oh, yeah.
And so, we just want to take that moment right now to acknowledge that it's always was, always will be
Aboriginal land.
Queerfully made. Ooh, yeah. Queerfully made. God, hey. Queerfully made. Come on now. Queerfully made.
Welcome to another episode of Queerfully Made, the podcast where we talk about the intersection of sexuality and faith. My name's Ben, a gay man from Melbourne.
And I'm Aaron, a gay ex-pastor from Melbourne as well. Welcome to the pod.
Welcome.
Today we have a very special guest. I sound like RuPaul when I say that. Extra special guest judge.
Extra special guest star.
We have today Steff Fenton, a genderqueer pastor, author, theologian, visionary, whose work really is redefining the church and Christianity for a world that's finally catching up. Steff wrote this groundbreaking book, Gender Expansive Faith, how trans lives are illuminating the divine, transforming feminism and ending Christian patriarchy, which is a really good read. I'm only partway through it, but I'm loving it. And it's really breaking my mind a little bit, which is great. Steff also co-founded a affirming church in Glebe, New South Wales called New City Church. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much.
Welcome.
Yeah, sorry to break your brain though, Aaron.
It's
hefty.
It needs to be broken.
It does need to be broken. I feel like I've had years, the last few years has just been break after break after break.
Yes, deconstruct. It's all about the deconstruct.
Yep.
Hey, Steff, great to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And we've got a question to kick things off. So
Let's go for it.
just to clear things up for us, right here, right now, tell us, is God a man or a woman?
Let's settle it right here, right now.
Settle it.
Look, I spend a whole chapter in my book talking about a God beyond gender.
Yes.
So I think I want to break that question down and say it's both and neither. There's lots of ways that God gets gendered in both ways in the Bible, but then there's also other names and labels and things that are just non-gendered as well. And so, I want to say God is a man, a woman. God is someone who is beyond those categories too in gender. And God is none of those as well. So
Love it. We're the ones putting the
That's
labels.
what's broken my mind.
Yes.
It's the everything and what is that movie? Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I quote it in there because I'm like, it is kind of like that. Everything everywhere all at once. That's kind of thinking about this concept of Yahweh, which is I am who I am, or it can also be I will be what I will be. I will be who, what, when, where I will be. It's everything everywhere all at once. And then kind of there's this flow of there are characteristics about God that are kind of defined in one way, and then all of a sudden God is like the opposite over here, and so like God is just non-binary in all the realms, and breaking our brains.
And it makes sense, right? Like putting my theology nerd hat on, like the whole omnipotent, omnipresent aspects of God, that God lives outside this box. I was about to say he lives outside of this box, but I'm going to try and refrain from doing that in my life.
But just throw them all in, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes I do. I correct myself and say they, and and people go, "What? My mom hates it."
Yeah.
But that idea that God doesn't fit into our human boxes, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And also, is like so beyond understanding and yet also still understandable, and like so beyond and far, but still near and close. And we can kind of grasp things like those two things both at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think that's really like the kind of a lot of the concept of how I think like queer and trans people teach us more about the divine is by living and existing outside of things that kind of break our brains a little bit, and we go, wow, it's possible to do that or be that. I didn't realize that. That doesn't fit a box for the world that we live in, but then actually that's the divine, that's God. So yeah.
It's funny to think about all the times, like growing up, God to me was always Father, male. Jesus is depicted as the physical representation of God. So it's this, he is the son of God. And so it goes beyond just that though, and that idea that, okay, maybe because I've had conversations with people where they say, okay, maybe the spirit is the feminine or the outside of the box. It goes beyond that, right? Like we're not just breaking it down to this, oh, let's try and make sense of this.
Yeah. And I think there's been like wonderful contributions from like feminist theologians and a lot of Christian women or people writing about God in feminist and women's imageries. Like one example is the communion or the Lord's Supper, or whatever kind of where we sort of drink the blood of God. Like it's weird. Drink like Jesus' blood and like feed on his flesh. But then that's a real a baby is in the womb that is like literally feeding on the flesh and blood of a person being pregnant or a woman being pregnant. Right. And so like that's a real, we can kind of find these images if we go looking for them, and people who have those experiences can show them actually that's a real like womanly experience. And I also break apart the fact that like the first time I saw a man pregnant on Instagram, and kind of like my mind just being like, whoa, like I've never seen a man pregnant before. Yeah. Just like kind of seeing.
Apart from that movie, what was the movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Oh yeah, yes, I remember. No. I know the one you're talking about, but I don't know which one. Yes, and like terrifying. It was.
Yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger pregnant just isn't right on so many.
Just not right.
This was much more beautiful content. Yeah, but yeah, also that like a trans man being pregnant as well. Like that's also I don't know where I was going with that, but I guess like there's
that was the first time you saw that photo.
Yeah. And just like that there's lots of great contributions of these like womanly images of God, but then to also go beyond that and actually see that like when we see father, mother, and these other ways that God does show up very, like front and center, even in the stories that, men have interpreted for us and only kind of drawn out these manly images of God.
Or the masculine.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, you talk about then, like there's lots of different things that we can find if we go searching for them and seeking. Like when did this all start for you? When did that seeking start? I guess the seeking outside of the traditional, boxes, labels, binaries, male, like masculine. When did that start for you?
Yeah. I think there was a point at which I knew I can't live into this narrative that I'm expected to live into in the church. I think it's like for a lot of queer people, you've probably had that moment where you've tried your hardest to, like maybe be straight or to, resist who you are inside, and then reach a point.
Yeah, we both tried.
Yeah. Had a good go. Yeah.
We had a really good go.
Give it a red hot.
Yeah. Didn't work.
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't work. And I just remember I got like weird pastoral advice, like
no.
Yeah.
Shock.
Tell us more.
Like Newtown is kind of the center of queer land in Sydney, and I just remember a pastor telling me, you know, Steph, I think everything will be okay as long as you don't move to Newtown. And that was the pastoral advice. And so the next year I like moved to Newtown, of course, and made my first queer friends.
They gave it away.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, but I also remember it was actually like, I remember a minister being like, it's not okay to be gay, but it is okay to be trans. And this was like a Sydney Anglican minister. And at that point I was like, because they were like, it's not about gender, like this is about sexuality, this is about gender. I was like, this doesn't make sense at all in the slightest. Wow. And I mean, like, yeah, you know, at the time I was like, so you're saying if I transition to being a man, like that's okay, but then if I'm gay, then it's not. And essentially it was. And at that point I was like, okay, I know that none of you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. If this makes sense to you, and if this is like a logical thing, like this, thank you very much. You've gifted me with the best thing, which is just like weirdness, something that doesn't make sense. And now I can confidently walk away and know that like you don't have authority, and like I don't have to listen to you anymore. I have no idea like what else is out there. And you know, that was terrifying, but you know, it was a gift to be like, oh great, okay, yeah. That's
a great way to look at it. It was a gift. You know, like many would just take it as, well, that's disappointing. Yeah. And that's discouraging. And that means this for my life. Like things are just going to get worse from here.
Especially because you're taught not to dig deeper, like, right? Like you're taught not to question.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, you'd stop.
You'd stop.
But good on you
Whereas
for being
you were
inquisitive.
like, no, this is a gift. This means I can go and explore.
Yeah. And I think I'm an ENFJ on the Myers-Briggs, which is like the advocate. So I think I was like gifted in my personality to just be kind of fierce and, you know, be like attuned to something being not right, and then be like, actually, I'm going to stand up for this. This is not okay. So I think there are a few things that I'm really grateful for, just uniquely who I am, that I kind of was able to survive all of that and come out the other side and just be like, yeah, trans and queer people reveal the divine.
So how old were you when this was all happening?
Yeah. I was 19 when I first like fell in love with my like best friend at uni, essentially, and like had my first queer relationship. Although, you know, it was you know, not really a relationship, was like a lot of shame and secrecy.
Yes.
And yeah, kind of identified as gay and slowly kind of unraveling those narratives for myself until about 30. And then realized like, oh, my queer story hasn't ended yet. Yeah, I think I'm trans. And yeah, I talk about a few kind of key moments in the book about like sort of gifts that, you know, other gifts that kind of invited me to accept this part of myself. You know, the first time someone asked me to write my pronouns for the first time was like, whoa, okay, like maybe you get to choose what pronouns you want to be called, like that's novel. And yeah, a friend kind of offering to use they them pronouns for me for the first time as well. But yeah, just kind of slowly making sense of the fact that like the kind of dominoes line up, I think, for a lot of people around their sexuality. Similarly for me with my gender, I was like, oh, like this makes so much sense for all those kind of mini experiences that I remember. It was like really yearning to be something different than the label I'd been given.
I grew up in the Pentecostal world, and they're known for stretching and evangelistic. That's what the word was. Evangelistic. They stretch things. They pick verses and
right.
Like they're always evangelistic with the numbers of the head count on a Sunday. Like that's,
sure.
Right? Like
a little bit inflated, maybe.
Yeah, we'll take a verse and we'll topically preach something, right? And so I always assumed that the Pentecostal church would be more open to this, but they're not. And I always looked from the Pentecostal side of Christianity at the Anglican side, thinking they were the uptight ones, they were really conservative. So to hear before you say that this Anglican minister was saying, oh, it's okay to be trans, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Like that completely blows my mind because I don't have a lived experience in that church. Tell me about growing up Anglican or that because you spent a long time even after realizing.
Yeah. And like a lot of my story is, so I grew up in Tamworth, a country town in New South Wales, country music capital of Australia.
I was going to say, is that the golden guitar?
That's the one.
Yes.
Yeah. Got a few photos underneath that wonderful Australian monument.
Yes.
So a lot of my kind of beginning church experiences were there. My dad was my minister. I was in Anglican Church there, and I was in quite a kind of like a lot of people who didn't really fit boxes, or a lot of diverse experiences at the church that I grew up in, and I have some of that within my family as well. And so I like to think that if this was more front and center back then, and I was at that church maybe at the time that I did realize I was queer, that maybe they would have kind of gone on that journey together. I think it would have been really difficult, but it was the kind of place that I'm glad I kind of had that experience of church. And then it was at 19 that I moved to Sydney and was just thrown into quite a conservative church environment. And don't get me wrong, Aaron, like 10 years later, they're not pro-trans. They're really anti-trans.
Okay.
Yeah. So they kind of cottoned on to the fact that, this is,
Okay.
They drew the logical points in their mind to be like, actually, it makes sense if we're anti-gay to be anti-trans. So,
well, we probably made that easier for them by putting it all into the one acronym.
yeah, that's right.
Of,
Yeah.
16 letters or whatever it is now.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think I was really like reckoning with, a kind of shift in church culture, I guess, that was quite black and white, quite restrictive, at the same time that I was like understanding my own experiences of sexuality and queerness. And it was a bad time. I talk a bit about it in the book. I think people have probably had similar experiences that we don't really need to go into heaps of detail about, but essentially, like, I was kind of a pretty core leader in my community, and then when I told my pastor I was gay, that just was like the flip of a switch, and all of a sudden, it was like, you're you can come along when that's it.
But then what I find fascinating is that you stayed, right? So you came out and then stayed in the church for how long?
About 8 years, I reckon.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think I remember in that church, I just kept coming and sitting in the well, it wasn't pews, it was seats, but it's more poetic to say pews.
It is,
yeah, that's right. And people noticed, like, and I was like, actually, like, you don't get to say that this isn't my space. And I think that's kind of that real, like, grounded, fierce advocate in me is like, actually, and similarly was told I couldn't be part of communion at a later church to kind of visibly show that I wasn't part of that community. And I was like, this is wrong. Like, you don't get to mediate between me and God. Like, that's not your table.
And obviously no position for you either. So no leadership position or like your level of involvement changes.
Yeah. And I think it's like what I really realized is I had lots and lots of conversations with different kinds of ministers at different churches that like really had a lot of compassion and care and would have these conversations. And I mean, it was always like they'd give me a book to read and then I'd give them one to read. I would read the book, they wouldn't.
Yes.
So, there was that. But it was really when, I got into a relationship that then the conversation stopped and, it was like, like all these kind of interactions we've had, actually, they mean nothing because at this point you don't want to change. You're just really like hardlined at this point.
Yes.
So I think I slowly recognized those patterns and sort of went to like the highest point of that church. Like we had our bishop come along to a queer storytelling night that we had, like a queer Christian storytelling night that we did, and hear all these painful stories of people's experiences of church. And then I met up with them and just said, so like anything?
Yeah. Do you feel anything?
Yeah. And, the response was just like, I just don't think we can do anything for those people in our churches.
Wow.
Where's the empathy? Like,
I know.
Yeah. We interviewed a pastor, Pastor Marcy, who her story was one where she saw that the fruit the church was producing in this area was bad, and that's what broke her. Like they had an experience with a young gay guy. The story broke her heart, and she became inquisitive and started growing and learning. And it's sad when you look at church leaders, like the thing that gets said is a church leader won't change unless they've been connected to an LGBTQ plus person or have someone who's LGBTQ plus share their story with them. It's sad when even that doesn't break them.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Wow. And I think that's when I started to go, well, yeah, what's the circle of what's my circle of influence really? And like I think, is it like circle of influence and circle of impact? I can't remember when those like two align. Like that's where you want to like focus your energy. And I think I really just realized like, oh yeah, there's no influence here. There's like, let's go a different pathway. Yeah. And I guess that's when I started kind of advocating against the church because it didn't want to listen from within. So I did it from outside.
Well, Jesus said, don't waste your pearls on swine, didn't he?
Wow.
Like he gave you that.
Yeah.
Timeless principle.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time.
But then where's your faith in all of this? Because like it would be so easy, and many of us have kind of got to the point where that sort of treatment, you get really disillusioned by the church, and you're doing your own deconstruction, but it just gets so demoralizing that you're like, you know what, I'm just going to give up on this. Many people have been in that position. Like, where was your faith in all of this?
Yeah. I remember my first blog, which like hitting post on that, like my heart was just like, like putting my story like publicly. I don't know, like 2,000 people probably saw it total, in the world. So didn't go viral. But
maybe it will now.
Not yet.
But it was like I remember titling it "Standing on the Rock" to come out. And so I was like, and I really had that verse, the Lord is my rock, my refuge, my fortress, my stronghold. And yeah, that's kind of all I knew at that time. I was like, all I know is like there's solid ground here. And it's kind of like I see myself in darkness and then this like rock, and I don't really know anything else. And I think I just slowly was able to like get rid of things and got to a point where I was really lucky enough to study a master's at a very queer inclusive theological college down in Melbourne. It's ecumenical, and so all the classrooms don't assume that you're speaking to an echo chamber. Like you kind of like people are going to have differences of theological belief in this room, so you have to have some sort of excuse or reasoning for why is it that you believe the thing that you believe. And that kind of learning classroom, I just remember I was just grabbing things left, right and center, being taught by like women, people of color, like Indigenous theologians, queer theology. And that really was a gift for me to just like, it was just like, here's all the kind of things. And I think for me that I'm really grateful and feel very lucky to have had that experience at the time that I did, because a lot of people don't kind of get the giftings of what else is out there. And so like, why would you stay if all you have is kind of like white man theology that just is pretty harmful? Like you need the other voices in the room to interpret those stories and speak beautiful things back. So I think
what a great experience. What a great school. Where was that?
It's called the University of Divinity in
Now I've recently heard about this.
Okay.
And when this person said the University of Divinity, I was like, is this like a sister school for Hogwarts? Like this can't be real. But she assures me that there are no capes or wands or Quidditch being played, but it's a real school.
It does.
Sounds made up though, right?
It is the best, and like it's a Masters of Divinity at the University of Divinity. It can't get more Harry Potter.
Sounds like spells and potions to me.
What was the first, like, can you remember the first sort of like non-traditional conservative evangelical theology that just made sense to you, that you're just like, wow?
I remember actually I thought I'd kind of got rid of all the old stuff.
Yep.
And then I was in an Indigenous theology class, and we talked about for God so loved the world, and just the way that is like always interpreted as just humans. But then this Indigenous worldview of like, for God so loved the world, like the whole world, like
The
people,
land.
animals,
Yeah.
like, you know, it's all, you know, and then from there you're like, okay, so it has to include everything that
Yes.
God is saving or cares about, and like all of it's kind of in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like that just kind of blew my mind. Like I've only ever thought of specific people being part of God's plan, and like now I have to incorporate something much more expansive. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I had a very similar experience after I came out
Mm.
in an Indigenous class, subject I was taking, and it broke down how I saw my whole faith really quickly. Like that concept that Jesus is the way, the only way to the Father, the way, the truth, the life. And in this Indigenous class, they shared the story of their creation story, basically their dream time. And there were just all these similarities between the Bible, not just our creation, but the Bible from beginning to end, and the story that was being told by this Aboriginal elder. And it just, my jaw hit the ground, and the lecturer saw me and said, Aaron, we'll leave it there today. It was only me and the lecturer in the class as well. And Aaron, we'll leave it there today. I know what's happening right now in your mind.
Wow.
Because it just, that moment of, hang on, we've only read this book through one lens, a straight man, white man lens. Hey.
Yeah.
It's, mind blowing.
Well, it is, and it's flipping the script, which is one of the terms that you use in the book, flipping the script. What other scripts have been flipped for you, to use the phrase?
Gosh, where do we start? Yeah. But I do think the number one script that I want to flip is this script of something being unnatural or less than or outside the norm, for like kind of like not what was created about queer and trans people, and actually it queer and trans people reveal God and aren't just kind of welcome and accepted in the diversity of human beings, but actually have unique superpowers and unique illuminations and revelations of divinity that cishet people just can't show us about God. And so actually we don't just need to include them in the human story and in the church story, but actually we need them to show us a more full picture of who God is, and to receive healing and liberation and beauty and expansiveness. And actually there's an invitation from our communities back to you to say, if you want to experience God and all that God is even more, we're here and we can show that to you. So I think that's the biggest thing I want to flip.
It's so beautiful, and I think some of that messaging that I've read, and I haven't read the whole book, but some of it in there around, I guess what moved me was my heart is for, obviously, for queer people to be accepted and affirmed in the church, but you go that one step further in terms of that role that trans people have to play. The line in there that's around prophets, like, are these the prophets that we've been waiting for, to actually reveal something to us that we haven't seen? Like, that was so, that part really moved me, because I was like, that's beyond just being welcomed, included, and affirmed. That's like, then there's calling attached to that, right?
Yeah. And one of my stories is being rejected from one of the evangelical colleges to study there, because I would have too much, I would influence or negatively impact that community. And a lot of people have this experience, right? But I remember just thinking wait, you think me in a conservative evangelical college where you are going to be lecturing to me, controlling the texts that I have to
Yes.
read, and then marking my work in a certain way where I have to write to your theology.
Through your rubric.
Yes. Yeah. You think I have any sort of impact to negatively influence your space? Like, wow, you must be really threatened by me.
Yeah.
And I remember
you must
being,
think a lot of me. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. I remember being like, oh, whoa, like, sounds like you don't really have a very strong faith. And I've got something that I can like really show you, you know?
Yeah.
And it's being like, yeah, just kind of being a real like script flipper from like, wow, like you're seeing me in this certain way, but actually like, thanks so much. Like, I need to go over here and explore this more. And like, what is it exactly that like I have here that can shake the foundations of your faith so much by just being me with like literally no power or agency in your institution, and you're afraid of me like crumbling that? Like, let's go.
Let's do this. Let's do this.
Like, bring it on.
I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of embracing. Yeah. I guess from that point forward.
It's so funny the insecurities that are there in evangelical Christianity, that like, what threat do we pose if you really are like you said, if you really are that sure of what you hold, what threat do we pose by being present?
Yeah.
And
Having a conversation, like it really should. Yeah, it should be okay to do that. Yeah.
So you obviously reached a point where you weren't finding what you needed in churches to be even interested in starting a church. Tell us a little bit about that journey for you.
Yeah. I think I always still wanted to be part of a faith community. I mean, I've had a little break in my life over the last couple of years since then, but up until that point, and you know, I think for some of us, it might be something that's just like automatic, that kind of lives in us, that this is something we've always done and have kind of been socialized into. And I think, you know, that is the part of healing work, is figuring out what really is me and mine, and what is the thing that I've just always known and is familiar and kind of has been expected of me. And I think there is a little bit of blurring in there, because having some time off, I still have a little niggle of wanting to be part of a faith community. But I think
I don't know if that ever goes away.
Yeah. I don't know.
I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess, it was that advocate again, just going like, actually, yeah, we deserve a space to be ourselves, and I guess also to be creative in our faith as well, and to learn to bring these parts of ourselves into our spirituality, and, you know, explore what is that going to look like when the cishet church is not there restricting what we can do. What does faith look like when we come together and do that as kind of queer people and people with other lived experiences? Like, what does that look like? So I guess that was kind of that part, I guess. And you know, seeing how much hurt happens, and wanting people to have a space, and like knowing that, you know, in my own experience, I was so isolated, you know, like kind of that image of like not knowing anything else but this kind of rock space, but then looking around and just being like, I don't see anything else or anyone else here. And not wanting others to have that experience, and wanting them to kind of be able to land forward, I guess. That was all really important. Yeah, and still is.
And this is with other people as well. This wasn't just you. You were joining forces in a way. Yeah,
it was a group of queers. Who all kind of had the same vision, I guess. Yeah, and background and story, and
One of my experiences, sort of leaving evangelical church during COVID, and then things opened back up in Melbourne, starting to try and find a church while I was doing that, was interesting, because I wanted to be able to contribute. So most Pentecostal churches out there, I couldn't. And most of the LGBTQ safe churches, or where I could, felt very different to what the style of church I liked, but also felt some of the ones I went to felt too LGBTQ for me. Like, I was like, oh, this isn't like I'm more than just my sexuality, right?
Goldilocks over here. This one's too hot.
Oh, there's too hot, too cold.
Too
I'm yet
cold.
to find one that was just right. But like it felt, yeah, this is a really safe space for me, but it felt too much for me. Like I was like,
They're too overwhelming.
yeah, I still wanted to be in a world where we could coexist with like the cishet world and the LGBTQ world could come together. And I'm still yet to find that. How did you guys navigate that space of, were cishet people welcome? Or was it like, no, you've had your time. You didn't welcome me now. We're flipping this script too.
Gays only.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Queer only. Show me your badge.
Yeah. Where's your license?
Yeah. Well, I think that's the beauty of if people can embrace queerness in its kind of, I guess, most like, I mean, I don't know, fullest or truest sense. I don't know the words, but to really kind of do the different thing. You know, to be queer is to kind of break the norm or do something different or something unexpected. You know, that's how we define queer. And I think it's something that can be for so many people. You don't have to be queer to do something different or go outside the box. I guess there's like different ways of understanding queerness, I guess, like as identities, but then also as like this kind of bigger thing that is like, blurring lines and going outside the norm. And I guess we gathered people who weren't queer but wanted to do things in a queer way and wanted to do things differently. And
that's cool.
Yeah,
that is really cool.
But I do think it's a sad thing that people do have to leave their churches and their communities and often families, and particularly when like culture as well is like another layer for people's experiences, which isn't my own, but it's sad when we have to just kind of isolate ourselves away from the communities that we've come from. It really shouldn't be that the church has all kinds of different people together, and that's when it's its best self, and that's its fullest self, you know? So I think the fact that, I feel the same. Like it's hard when you just have people who have the same experience together. Really, we're our best when we bring all kinds of people into the space. So
Did you face any kind of like backlash or any kind of like negativity, or like was there any pushback from anyone?
I didn't, and I'm not aware that we did. I think
Not from a community perspective, like just
no. And I don't know if they would now, or if churches are now, but I didn't at the time.
Moving forward from that, where is Steff now? Like, what is Steff up to?
So I've obviously like really kind of embraced this other queer identity of mine, which is being trans, and I do find labels like gender queer, so that kind of fluid space of gender, but really I love the label of agender, or the language of agender, which is just kind of like hitting unsubscribe altogether. And I kind of talk about my gender identity being Steff, that it's just like, but the fact that there was a lot of like wrestling through this, being given she, her pronouns, and like being described as a woman and female, and those really not feeling comfortable, and as well like having my own experience of my body being like, really desiring to have a different kind of look in my own skin. So I think there's been a lot of sort of change of embracing that over the last few years, which has been like an absolute joy. Like it's been a wild ride, and surgery and hormones are kind of big experiences, but I think just sort of embracing Steff as I am has been its own like wonderful, amazing thing, and feels like such a significant part of like who I am today, is just kind of like being me and living that. Like it still feels sort of novel, I guess. But I'm also like kind of talking about the book and trying to speak in as many places as I can, really trying to get along to maybe churches outside of cities that don't normally have people like me who might come and speak. So if you know any kind of faith community and you're listening, and can recommend a place that might love to have a speaker like me, let me know, reach out. And I'm also doing a lot of like education and training for churches, and trying to create some social environments as well for people who have queer and trans experiences, because I realize like people have to go back to the church and have to kind of find like inclusive and affirming churches, but you kind of have to go back to the church to get support and to meet community often. So I'm keen to, and I'm running the first peer group for trans and gender diverse people from faith backgrounds. There's another org in the States that does it, but often the timelines don't match up for people. But yeah, keen to kind of like cultivate those kind of safe spiritual spaces for people who want to dig deeper into these identities. Like that niggle, as you say, for a lot of people just does stay there. And I often, when I'm having conversations, like people just like, what do you do? And I talk about my book, and, often, other people might have this experience. You might have it as well. Like people then just are like, oh my goodness, like, here's my story of faith and church. People just like, so many people just still have it, and it's still sitting there. And for, it's often like the first time that people sort of engage it after a while, or can be really beautiful conversations. But I think the fact that, we don't have a lot of spaces like that for our communities to explore those in a way that really is just kind of open, and you don't have to go back to a church to maybe explore what your spirituality, and maybe that's multifaceted as well, and maybe that includes kind of elements of Christianity or other elements of, a lot of people get into tarot or like other forms of spirituality that I find helpful. That's my own experience as well, or maybe it's nature, or like just kind of having more, I guess, open understandings of being able to explore that. So that's the things in a mix.
And that's the seeking, I guess, outside of that. Like a lot of we talk about the intersection between faith and sexuality. Like because it sounds like you're speaking from a place where you've resolved a lot of the conflicts. Like people listening and people that we've spoken to still have those conflicts between that intersection. Like are there any still conflicts in you? Like are there still bits that are being resolved, or have you resolved it?
Solid.
Solid.
Yeah.
I'm there.
I've got it all figured out.
That's it.
Everything's great.
Yeah. I think what was I going to say something and I've lost it. But definitely not. I think there are kind of core things that you need, core skills that I think people need to learn. Like for myself, I remember sitting in a kind of inclusive church for the first time and listening to sermons and the way that people interpreted scripture, and I was like, wow, like how do you even do that kind of depth? Like I've just been used to just getting this shallow, bland, beige, black and white, like, whatever kind of reading of a story. I'm like, I can't even imagine being able to do that with this text. Like, and so learning the skills to really, I guess like not only be able to approach it and not have thoughts of like, this text is terrifying and traumatic, which requires a lot of healing. And that was the question. I think I've been able to, do a lot of healing and integration and kind of have a story. And I think writing the book, I still found that, I'd be typing away and be talking about stories, and actually like emotions would come up, and I cried quite a few times, writing the book, because I was like, wow, that story is, like it's there, and I haven't kind of let that out. So I think, I think it was a really helpful process, but I'm sure there are still stories there and experiences there that are kind of unhealed. But I think I don't know where I was going. That's my ramble.
No, I
love it. That's so good.
We have a number of our listeners, we don't know how many of them are out there, but a number of our listeners are closeted, scared to do anything about their sexuality or their gender, or like make a move, right? Because they feel something, they know something, like we all obviously did at one stage, but it's terrifying. And they're sitting in some churches where they've been born and raised in that church. Mum and dad won't love this. My pastor's not going to love it. My community's not going to love it. So I'm just going to keep it. And more we get messages that say, hey, this is really encouraging for me to know that there is life beyond this. What would you say to a young Steff that's sitting there in a church? You probably didn't have podcasts that you could listen to back then, right? I know I didn't. What would you say, like now that, if someone was listening to this and that's their experience?
Yeah, I think I really helpfully learnt about this concept of inviting in, which is often used for maybe people from more culturally diverse backgrounds who, I guess this concept of coming out is a very sort of like Western white. It's like you just kind of, you're out of the closet and there you go. Like, here I am. You tell everyone at the same time and you're just out loud and proud. But for a lot of people who are queer, who are maybe navigating cultural or faith identities, to not feel like you have to do it all at once, and that you can invite in who you want to invite in at whatever time you want to do that. Like, it doesn't have to be, you're like, let's not be binary about it. Let's be non-binary about it. So like, I think that's a really helpful concept that I think people might resonate with, is like slowly finding the people who, you want to let know about this awesome part of yourself. And I guess it's like, it kind of gives you more agency, and it's not about like something shameful that you're hiding away, but something like beautiful and precious that that some people in your life are going to get to hear about, and that's a beautiful thing. And I would say, like, in terms of advice, I would say find those communities or those people who are safe and lean into them and just take it one step at a time. And I think in terms of like spirituality and faith, find the things that are life-giving and which like aren't feeling heavy and harmful, and lean into those. And if there are still things that feel really important to you, that are part of your faith, or that you don't want to let go, but maybe just now's not the time, like, don't worry, you can come back to that later. And maybe just need a break from reading certain things, or being exposed to certain communities, or doing certain practices. Like, you know, it was actually really oddly, the night of my book launch, I think I've still prayed a bit, but have kind of felt like, you know, it's just a thing that you do.
Yes.
But then the night of my book launch, I actually just started praying to God, and I was like, what the heck? I haven't done this in ages.
Wow.
And like, it's just like, it just happened. And I was like, this is a wild experience. And so I think it's like, things will come when you're ready for them to come.
Oh,
and
come on,
yeah.
So someone's listening and they hear that and they go, okay, you say it's beautiful. You say that, you say all these words that I just cannot believe because my pastor says there is only the binary. My pastor says that it's a sin. If I was to go down that path of changing who I am, I'm going to go to hell. Like, what's your case? Like, if you were to say, here's a case that I could present to you, to say, hey, there's more than what your pastor's saying. There's more than the binary. What would it be?
Yeah.
What was the light switch moment for you?
Yeah. I mean, like, how long do you have to like deconstruct that theology?
Yeah. What was a starting place? Not the whole thing.
Yeah.
But like a starting place for this, for someone who's just too scared and don't know where to start.
Yeah. So much. I think I kind of want to talk about two things, like one of which is like how harmful the gender binary is. And like all the world's leading research tells us that the gender binary drives violence and discrimination across the globe, particularly against women. We have an endemic of violence against women across the globe, and what drives it is strict definitions of man and woman, masculinity and femininity. And so to keep perpetuating these ideas is actually not a godly thing. You know, God doesn't drive violence. Like, that's not the God we know. And it's all through the book. And the reason why trans and queer people, and particularly trans people, are being targeted right now is because we threaten that system, which
Yes.
says that there are only two types of people in the world. And that kind of gender binary system is what upholds patriarchy. Like you need a strict definition of man as leader, strong, protector, governor, you know, and we need a strict
Donald
definition
Trump.
of, that's right, of woman as helper, soft, passive, in order for men to be promoted and to be leading, and, you know, and women to be subjugated.
Yes.
Time and time again, God says, you know, there are no hierarchies in the kingdom that I'm building. You all are on the same level. You're all servants.
There is no longer slave or free, black or white. Right. Yeah.
And so I guess I want people to know that, you know, these stories are there in, you know, and they're in the center of our Christian story, and they are about, you know, God themselves is one who queers and one who is trans, and like maybe you just haven't discovered it yet, but but it's there, and it's obvious. It's not like you kind of have to go digging for it. It's really thoroughly in those stories, and I think I would say find a different way to have the conversation as well. Is, you know, whenever we start from let's talk about the way this Bible passage is, you know, anti-gay or anti-queer, we'll always be starting from a deficit place. But if, you know, for me, I'm like, okay, like you can have that conversation, but the one I'm interested in talking about is like the fact that God is man and woman, you know, let's start from there. And, you know, the beautiful poetic nature of Genesis being so non-binary, and the way that God creates being this kind of spectrum of things. And then so when we get to gender, it's a spectrum. I talk a bit more about that. I think ultimately there's all of that. But I think ultimately if God is God is either small or big, and God is either like, God's love is either so minimal that it can't overcome these things, or it's actually like, we know God to be able to encompass everything, and so why not you? And God's love to be able to, you know, drive out, you know, so much harm, and you know, show so much extension, you know, came from this different category of divinity to humanity to extend themselves to us. You know, that's not nothing. And I think it's those like things about God that we really need to be reminded of. And, you know, that was it for me, is like, God is that person who wants to be my stronghold, who wants to be my fortress, who is a safe place. Knowing that there is nothing that separates us from God's love. And really those kind of core things I think about who God is and what are they doing in the world, that there's a lot of theology that gets put on that around like salvation understandings, which we could have a whole conversation about that. But yeah, I think those are the things that often are so minimized and restricted in that conversation as well. It's not just about this kind of queer gay conversation, but about who God is in the understanding of people who believe those things as well.
But it's with that lens, and I think you say in the book about that gender expansive lens. That's the lens that we put over it, which is just for me it's a totally different way of framing it and then thinking, which then is going to drive your beliefs, right? That one of the other words that you've used and you use in the book is the divine, which I love, because I think my experience now coming out of Christianity on its own and exploring other faiths and other, like, I'm like, what is spirituality now to me? What is God to me? Who is God to me? What, you know, and I feel like my view has just kind of gone like this and just widened, which has been awesome to explore, right? But I've come into contact with the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and actually had a really beautiful experience recently around the divine feminine, and I feel like there's this beautiful harmony of both within me now, which has been a really beautiful journey to go on. But I love, can I read a quote that you've got in there, which talks about faith and the divine? Our faith is all about deep listening to the divine, so I can cultivate this within myself and overflow that beauty into the world around me. That's such a beautiful phrase that really, I think that probably hit me the hardest in terms of how it relates to my story. Where does that come from? Where does and is the divine, like, is that who you call God now?
Yeah, I think I want to, do in terms of like people who, when we hear the word God, people are going to have then a whole understanding of what does God
Preconceived.
mean, you
Sure.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think in my writing and speaking, what I'm often trying to do is bring in new language and like use different interpretations of scripture that people probably haven't been exposed to before. So even if we're reading familiar stories, they sound different. We don't automatically go to that place that we went when we heard that story read in a certain way,
Setting, yeah.
certain language. It allows us to go, I think it allows us who have had negative experiences and harmful experiences really to be safer and more open in kind of opening ourselves to that. It feels a bit more comfortable, and it does then allow like, wow, okay, I've now got to find a whole different form of language to explain this thing, that then, these kind of fun, wonderful things start coming out, and you have to think a bit more deeply or a bit more like, what does it mean when we say, God or, transformation or, like all these kinds of words that we hear that people just use as jargon. But I guess, I guess I really feel like in letting go of gender and, previously it was sexuality and that kind of script of you must be this and perform this thing and, have these kinds of behaviors. And lots of people will resonate with this, whether you're trans or not, like these gender scripts that we get given that we kind of have to unravel and peel off ourselves and go, like actually there's this beautiful femininity within me that I'm now able to embrace for myself that, I don't have to fear because the world told me not to be feminine. And there were repercussions in like being feminine in the world. So then when we allow those things to kind of not have power over us anymore, it's just that liberatory, like beautiful wave of possibility of like, who am I and who do I want to be and what matters most to me? What are the values I want to cultivate in my life? What is the things that I find important? Where do I want to pour my energy into? All those things become things that we get so much more time to focus on when we're not trying to resist these other things and like perform them and fit, kind of this strict category of who we've been told to be as a human. And I think that's like, to me, that is like transformation, and that is, encountering freedom, all these things that I believe God to be is like, someone who heals us and allows us to let go of these heavy things and take weight off, and more align with, beauty and love and kindness and, the things, compassion, justice. The fruits. The
good fruit.
And not just for others, but for ourselves, and for ourselves first, and I think that's where that kind of overflow is like it comes to me and fills me first, and then I can't help but burst with these beautiful things in my life because I've been freed, and now I just want to kind of reveal that and show that.
Share the good news.
That's it. Yeah.
I remember that feeling of not having to hide that secret anymore, and like it was finally out in the open, and all the bad things I thought were going to happen, sure, some of them happened, right? Like, I lost community, I lost my job, but my goodness, the freedom of just being like, I'm not hiding this part. I'm not trying to push it down. I'm not trying to squash it. I'm not trying to tell myself it doesn't exist or it shouldn't exist.
Yeah, or it shouldn't.
Now I'm finally able to breathe for the first time and feel for like it felt like I'd unlocked feelings. Like that just I can feel now. I can be and not have any restrictions. And that description you gave was just that, like, oh my goodness, this is so different.
And it's funny too, I've spoken to a friend of mine who's one of those people that has really walked with me through and is still a really, really good dear friend of mine. And she talks to other people who are still in church that she's still in contact with, that I knew from back in those days as well. But, and they'll ask the questions like, oh, how's Ben going? And they'll ask
I hate
them
those
that way.
questions.
Yeah. And she said to one of them recently, she's like, you know what? He is more himself than he has ever been.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud that she would say that in that moment, not to kind of defend or anything, but to just say, you know what? Like, you should see him now.
Yeah.
Like, he is the most
He's
himself
not
he's
surviving,
ever
he's
been.
thriving.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
is thriving.
Yeah.
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 Because he's just the full expression. I'm the full expression of Ben in all of me that I've never got to be, which is just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I remember a similar comment from a friend of mine, which was, "You're still Steff, you're just more Steff."
Yes.
Yeah,
That's so good.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Which-
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. For all of our listeners, make sure you grab a copy. Gender Expansive Faith, How Trans Lives Are Illuminating the Divine, Transforming Feminism and Ending Christian Patriarchy.
Where do we find the book? And where do we find you on the line?
Yeah, you can find my book anywhere kind of online that sells books. So the major platforms. You can, if you want to support me, buy it from my website, which is steffenton.co. I've got F's in my name rather than PH.
Good distinction.
Yeah. Yeah.